The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my strength in whom I will trust, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. Psalms 18, verse 2. Hey there, welcome back to another rock class video. Hey, I need your help with this one. I want to talk to you today about a particular prophet of God, but I'm having trouble with his name. This prophet, and you'll probably remember it right away, he was swallowed by a great big fish. Do you remember the name of the prophet? Who was it that was swallowed by a great big fish? That's right, Jonah. Let's talk about Jonah today. So Jonah was a prophet of God, and God called Jonah to go preach against a city. Do you remember the name of the city that God told Jonah to go preach against? That's exactly right. He sent Jonah to Nineveh. There's a problem, though. Did Jonah want to go to Nineveh? That's exactly right. He did not want to go. So Jonah decided to run away. So Jonah found a ship, and the ship was traveling to another city. Do you remember the name of this city the ship was going to? Think about it for a moment. That's exactly right. It was going to be traveling to the city of Tarshish. So Jonah gets aboard the ship sets sail. Well, along the way, the Lord sent a great storm. And the storm began to toss the ship back and forth. The men were afraid the ship was going to break apart. So Jonah, he's asleep down below. The other men, they are panicking, and they're all praying to their false gods for help. So someone goes down, finds Jonah sleeping, and they wake up Jonah, and they say, "Aren't you scared too? You need to pray to your God." Well, you and I both know that Jonah knew what the problem was. And so Jonah goes to the men on the ship, and what does he tell them to do? Think about it. What did Jonah tell the men to do? That's right. Throw me overboard. That's right. He told the men to throw him overboard. Well, they didn't want to do that. They decided to try to make it back to land, and they were unable to. So finally they listened to Jonah, and what did they do? That's right. They threw him overboard. And then the storm calmed. So now we have Jonah. He's sinking down in the sea. He's sinking down in the water. What does the Bible say the Lord prepared for Jonah? Think about it. What did the Lord prepare for Jonah as he was sinking down into the sea? That's right. He prepared a great fish for Jonah. Now, this fish wasn't there for Jonah to eat. No, the fish was there to swallow Jonah. Seems kind of strange, doesn't it? But it worked. The great fish that God prepared for Jonah, he swallowed Jonah. And so Jonah, who was drowning in the water, now is given safety in the belly of this great fish. Now, do you remember how many days and nights Jonah was in the belly of this great fish? Do you remember? That's exactly right. 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of this great fish. And while he was in the belly of this fish, he prayed and he prayed and he prayed to God. Well, at the end of 3 days and 3 nights, God caused the fish to spew Jonah up on the land. Now, between you and me, I don't think that would be very fun, but that's what happened. The fish spewed Jonah up onto the land. And so God comes to Jonah, and he tells Jonah to go where and to preach. That's right. He calls Jonah now a second time to go to the city of Nineveh and to preach to the city. So this time, Jonah obeys God, and he travels to Nineveh. Nineveh was a large city. And do you remember how many days Jonah spent walking throughout the city, preaching God's message to them? Do you remember how many days? That's right, 3 days. And what was this message that Jonah was preaching to the city? I want you to think about it for just a moment, and I'll be right back. So, did you remember what the message was that Jonah was preaching? That's right. He says, "Yet 40 days, and Nineveh will be overthrown or destroyed." Now, what a message that was. For Jonah to be going throughout the city, preaching, "Yet 40 days, and Nineveh will be overthrown." So how do you think the king reacted when he heard the message? Was he angry with Jonah? Did he threaten Jonah? Do you remember? Yeah, what did the king of Nineveh do when he heard Jonah's message? That's exactly right. He did 2 things. First off, he put on something. He put on sackcloth, that's right. And then he sat in ashes. Sackcloth was a very rough material, very uncomfortable. And they would, in times of mourning and great sorrow, the people would put on sackcloth and sit in ashes. And it was a sign of remorse. It was a sign of fear. He had believed the message of Jonah, and he repented. And not just the king, but the city of Nineveh repented from all their evil ways. Now, you would think Jonah would be happy because the city had repented. But Jonah was not happy. He was what? Do you remember? That's right. Jonah was angry. He was angry. Why? Well, because he thought God should destroy the city. As a matter of fact, Jonah said, "See, this is why I didn't want to come in the first place, because I knew your mercy and I knew you would forgive them." How sad is that? So, God spared Nineveh, and he used a vine to illustrate to Jonah that God has the right to show mercy to whomever he chooses to show mercy. You know, the story of Jonah is a very powerful story because it teaches us about the mercy of God. But it also teaches us the importance of obeying God and doing his will. Let me encourage you to think about this story. Think about Jonah's disobedience and the lesson that God taught him, and Jonah's repentance when he prayed to God from the belly of the great fish, and God sparing Jonah and forgiving him, and then being willing to forgive Nineveh as well. Listen, you did a great job. Review the story of Jonah with your parents, and I'll see you on the next video. Have a great day.